Honourable members, the prayer. Lord, the God of righteousness and truth, grant to our King, to his government, to members of the Legislative Assembly, and to all in positions of responsibility, the guidance of your Spirit. May they never lead the province wrongly through love of power, desire to please, or unworthy ideas, but laying aside all private interest and prejudice, keep in mind their responsibility to seek to improve the condition of all. Honourable members, I ask you to remain standing as we take a moment to pay our respects to Constable Travis Jordan, 35. Constable Brett Ryan, 30. Were tragically taken from us this morning while they were murdered in the line of duty. Both men made the ultimate sacrifice for the safety of our communities, for our people, and we are all forever in their debt. Our thoughts, our prayers, and our support is with their families, as well as the greater policing community, including the sheriffs and the Legislative Assembly Security Service. Ask that you join me now in a moment of silence as we remember the lives of these two courageous young officers. Rest eternal, grant unto them, O Lord, and let light perpetual shine upon them. Members, we will now be led in the singing of God Save the King by Ms. Nicole Williams.
God save our gracious King, long live our noble King. God save the King, send him victorious, happy and glorious, long to reign over us. God save the King.
Please be seated.
Introduction of visitors. Introduction of guests.
Honourable members, please proceed to your seats. It's fine. Honourable members, I do have a number of guests to introduce today. And for the benefit and knowledge of all members, the introductions clock doesn't begin until the conclusion of the speaker's introductions. Members, seated in the speaker gallery is one of the most incredible, most outstanding constituents of Olds Didsbury Three Hills. She is my constituency assistant, Alana Gibson. She's accompanied by her husband, Alistair Gibson, and their three wonderful daughters, Charlotte, Elizabeth, and Amelia. I invite the Gibsons to rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly. Also seated in the speakers gallery today are very, very close good friends of mine, Lauren Casimir, Jack Casimir, and Eli Casimir. They are constituents who live in Olds Didsbury Three Hills. They are here as part of the Homeschooling Association of North Star Academy out of Didsbury, and also my favorite sister, much to the chagrin of my other sister, Naomi Pulliam, and my nephew, Isaac Pulliam. Please rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly. Today we are very, very pleased to have the grandfather joining us today of our head page, Aaliyah Sevigny. Her grandfather, Mr. Doug Tupper, is the former executive director of the Police Commission, so it is on a particularly difficult day for him, but I ask them to rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly. And finally, honorable members, I'd also like to introduce to you, and through me, 6 staff of the Alberta Ombudsman's office seated in the galleries. These hardworking staff are here today to watch the proceedings, and the Ombudsman is appreciative of their work. Please rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly. The Honourable, the member for Lacombe-Panoka has a school group.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I am very happy to introduce the classes from École Lacombe Upper Elementary School. I'd like to recognize their teachers, Derek Rankin and Heather McKay Hawkins. Both have been with the school for more than 20 years. Also educational assistants, Angela Richter and Eden Cade. And included in this class is the granddaughter of my constituency assistant, Cheryl Christie. To all the students and teachers from École Lacombe Upper Elementary School, please rise today and receive the warm welcome of the House.
The Honourable member for Sherwood Park has a school group.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to introduce to you and through you the grades 5 and 6 classes from Woodbridge Farms Elementary School and their teacher, Antonio Trisca. Thank you all so much for being here. Please rise and receive the warm welcome of this House.
The Honourable, the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. To you and through you, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to welcome the grade 6 students from Menno Simmons Christian School, accompanied by their teacher, Aaron Folkerts. If we can give them, please, warm welcome of this Assembly and have them rise, please. Thank you.
I might take a brief speaker liberty that my childhood babysitter has joined this school group, Mr. George Graffender. Please rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly. The Honourable member for Peace River.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to introduce to you and through you a terrific friend of mine, a community builder, a council member of the town of Peace River, a cancer survivor, and more importantly, Mr. Speaker, a deeply good person, Shelley Shannon. Please rise and receive the very warm welcome in the House.
The Honourable member for Red Deer South has an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to introduce to you and through you my friend Nick DeGeer. Nick is a lifelong Central Albertan and a civil engineering student at University of Alberta, admitted at only the age of 17. He is also a member of the Conservative Club at the university and is excited to learn about the work we do here. Please rise and receive a warm welcome from the Assembly.
Are there others? The Honourable member for Edmonton Glenora.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce Doug Tupper. As was mentioned, he was on the Police Commission. He's also a former Assistant Deputy Minister with Alberta Environment and was a trustee and board chair with Edmonton Public Schools. But most importantly, he's a grandfather to Ayla Sevigny. He's here to watch her today in action, so please join me in welcoming him as well.
The Honourable member for Chester Strathmore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm honoured to rise today to introduce to you and through you my very good friend, Dr. Bhavini Gohil. Bhavini is the director and co-founder of the Grassroots Global Health and Acute Care Physician, site chief of the Hospitalist program in South Health Campus in Calgary, and a clinical assistant professor at the University of Calgary. Thank you so much to the Minister of Indigenous Affairs and to Maya Eshte today for meeting with us, and thank you so much to you, Dr. Gohil, for all the work that you do here at home and across the globe. If you would please rise to receive the warm welcome.
Are there others? The clerk.
Ministerial statements.
The Honourable, the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise today with a very heavy heart. Last night, Constable Travis Jordan and Constable Brett Ryan, the Edmonton Police Service, were tragically killed in the line of duty while responding to a call. Constable Brett Ryan was 30 years old, 5.5 years of service. Constable Travis Jordan was 35, and he had about 8.5 years of service. Today, the province mourns the loss of these two heroes. We extend our deepest sympathies and condolences to the family and friends. Mr. Speaker, every day, police officers across Alberta put their uniforms on, they step up and protect and serve our communities. These courageous men and women bravely rise to any challenge that comes their way to protect the public. Police officers are more than just the uniform that they wear. They are an integral part of the communities that they serve. Their moms, their dads, their brothers, their sisters, their daughters, their sons. And like any other job, family members send their loved ones off to work. And unlike any other job, these family members hope and they pray and they worry that their loved ones may not return home safely at the end of their shift. And for the Ryan and Jordan families, this did not happen today. The sudden and tragic deaths of these officers remind us again of the dangers that police officers constantly face when they serve the people of Alberta. Albertans would not be the great province that it is today without the service and sacrifice of constables Jordan and Ryan. And Alberta's government is here to support the Edmonton Police Service, their members, their families during this tragedy. To honor the service and dedication of these officers lost, the flags of the legislature will be lowered to half-mast. Mr. Speaker, there are no words that I can say to make up for the loss of the life that occurred today. As a former police officer myself, to all my brothers and sisters out there that are on the front lines, I mourn with you. Everybody here mourns with you. And to the members of EPS and all of our frontline law enforcement, we all here have your back. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and of course, thank you to the Minister for his words today. It is with great sadness that I rise to deliver this statement to the House, marking the loss of 2 Edmonton police officers killed in the line of duty earlier this morning. Constable Travis Jordan, 35 years old, a member for 8.5 years. Constable Brett Ryan, 30 years old, a member of 5 years. I know that there are no words that can truly capture the scale of heartbreak experienced by Albertans today. And so I rise only to offer the sincerest and deepest condolences on behalf of His Majesty's official opposition. I first want to speak to the members of the Edmonton Police Service and, by extension, all Albertans who serve their communities on police forces across this province. Alberta stands with you. Today's tragedy reminds us of your sacrifice and of your bravery. You put yourselves in danger for the sake of our loved ones, our children, our parents, and our grandparents, people who mean the world to someone but are total strangers to you. You work in one of the most dangerous professions in the world, and the consequences of your courage can sometimes be devastating. Today, all of Alberta grieves with you. And I want to speak to the families of these officers. It takes an enormous amount of strength to see your loved ones go to work every day, knowing that they will face these kinds of dangerous situations, and to receive this news is devastating. But do know that you are not alone, and all Albertans mourn with you. Mr. Speaker, we also know there's another woman involved in this event. This was a domestic dispute, and there's now a woman fighting for her life in hospital. So we extend our condolences and support to her and to her family as well. Finally, I wish to speak to all of us in this assembly, no matter what side of the aisle we sit on. Across this country, we have lost 7 officers in the last 6 months. We know that frontline responders are facing increased risks doing their job, keeping citizens safe. After 3 years of greater and greater stress on our communities all across this country, I believe that we can say these incidents are not isolated, and neither are the solutions. It's on all of us to do everything we can to keep our communities safe, and through that, to keep our officers safe. And we can do that in our roles here by working to build more secure communities. We owe it to the memory of Constable Jordan and Constable Ryan to come together, to find solutions, and to provide greater support and greater strength to Albertans throughout our province. We owe it to all first responders, their families, and all Albertans to do everything we can to keep officers safe as they set out each day to do the same for us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member statements.
The honourable member for Edmonton McClung has a statement to make.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Families across this province are feeling the pressure of the increased cost of living. It costs more to put food on the table because grocery prices have increased. Utilities are more expensive, and it's harder for Albertans to pay for their homes as both mortgages and rent are increasing right now. And today I'm going to speak to the need to support Alberta drivers by making insurance more affordable. It's harder for families to drive to work, drop kids off at school and their sports games and music lessons when insurance premiums increase. And they have increased a lot over the past few years. Many families saw their premium go up as high as 30% during the pandemic. This is unacceptable, Mr. Speaker, and it is avoidable. I was proud to be part of a government that successfully froze insurance premiums. We did this even though the province faced many economic challenges. We prioritize this because supporting families to pay their bills is the most important during tough economic times. Under the UCP, insurance premiums skyrocketed. Albertans paid more even though they drove less during the pandemic. We continually called for the UCP to support drivers and stop allowing insurance premiums to increase. I was glad to see the UCP announce they would freeze insurance rates in January until the end of 2023. However, Mr. Speaker, that good news was short-lived because two insurance companies announced the rate increases in March for 13% and 16%, which were approved by the Automobile Insurance Rate Board. Unfortunately, the announced insurance freeze is no freeze at all. Albertans pay more for the most expensive car insurance in Canada, and it's still getting more expensive. Albertans deserve real relief to bring down the cost of keeping their cars on the road.
The honourable member for West Yellowhead.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to talk about an unthinkable and unimaginable tragedy that happened last night. The lives of two dedicated EPS officers were tragically taken. This is a tragedy that will be felt around the halls of the legislature, around the city of Edmonton, our province, our country, and indeed around the world. Firstly, I want to acknowledge the families and friends of the fallen officers who are involved in this heartbreaking event. Our thoughts and prayers are with you as you navigate the days and the weeks ahead. I also want to acknowledge the security guards here today, most who are retired EPS officers themselves, many who were connected with last night's tragic event in some way, shape, or form. Yet they are here today showing the true heart of EPS members, both past and present. It's a heart that exemplifies courage, integrity, and service to community. Our thoughts are with you. I want to thank all the men and women in uniform that put their lives at risk every single day to keep our communities safe. Alberta's law enforcement agencies are world-class, and part of the reason Alberta is the best place to live, work, and raise a family. Rest assured, our thoughts and our prayers are with you today. We stand with you. Thank you for your service.
The honourable member for Calgary Glenmore.
Mr. Speaker, Alberta's children are the future of this great province, and securing their future should be our top priority. Children in care have survived difficult circumstances. They have lived through trauma and faced barriers in work and their education when they transition out of care. The Transition to Adulthood program, or TAP, exists to remove that barrier. The TAP program provides children in care the supports they need to transition into adulthood. Just as the program's namesake suggests, it acts as a bridge for children in care as they age into adulthood and proceed on their journey to fulfill their full potential. We need to remove barriers to education and employment for Alberta's youth and young adults transitioning out of care so that they can have access to the same opportunities as their peers. This is precisely the reason why I'm thrilled that the Alberta's government has made the decision to change the eligibility of age to 24 while simultaneously injecting $28 million into the program to ensure that young adults have more options once they age out of care. This will help bridge the gaps when children in care need to access post-secondary education, employment and skills training and placement, and help prepare them for everyday life once they have moved on from the foster care system. Everyone, no matter their background, should have equal opportunities to succeed in this great province. And programs like TAP are doing just that to ensure that no child in Alberta is left behind. Securing Alberta's future also means protecting our most vulnerable, especially Alberta's youth and young adults. Thank you for making sure that youth aging out of care are fully empowered to succeed as adults.
Honourable members, the time is now 1:50, and that makes it oral question period. And the Leader of His Majesty's Loyal Opposition has question 1.
Mr. Speaker, I know all of us in this Assembly were heartbroken, as we've already discussed, to learn of the deaths of the 2 Edmonton police officers this morning, Constable Travis Jordan and Constable Brett Ryan. These officers were killed in the line of duty, doing their jobs, serving their communities. Our opposition joins the government in offering our deepest condolences to their families, their friends, and their colleagues in this devastating loss. We all share in that grief and that sadness. So, to the Minister of Public Safety, can you tell us what supports are being provided to families and loved ones of these officers?
The Honourable the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank the Leader of the Opposition for the question. Alberta's government, of course, extends our deepest sympathies and condolences to the friends and families and loved ones of the fallen officers. As a result of the tragic events that occurred today, Alberta's government, of course, has established the Heroes Fund in 2020 for first responders who die in the line of duty. This fund provides a one-time tax-free payment of $100,000 for eligible family members. First responders eligible for the payment would include police officers, firefighters, paramedics, sheriffs, and provincial corrections officers who die as a result of their duties. And again, I'd like to thank the member of the opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, thank you very much to the Minister for that answer. This tragedy is a somber reminder of the dangers that police officers face each and every day in their service to Albertans. We know that police members are a family and that these events have an impact on every single member of the service. And we want to make sure that those members, those officers, are supported in this difficult time as well. So can the Minister tell this Assembly what supports or services are being provided to fellow Edmonton police officers grieving this unimaginable loss?
The Honourable the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services.
Thank you very much, and I couldn't agree more with the Leader of the Opposition. We are united on this. The Government of Alberta is going to continue to support the Edmonton Police Service through this incredibly difficult time. These fantastic men and women who patrol our streets every day to keep our community safe, we're here to help. Offer any resources that we have available. We're, of course, in direct contact with the Edmonton Police Service and there to let them know that we are here for them. And to all the courageous officers on the front lines, let them know as well, we are all here for you.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you again to the Minister. These tragedies, of course, also carry a deep impact on the community and on our city and on our province. And I know that all of Edmonton and all of Alberta stand in solidarity with our officers today, and the people of this city and this province will be looking for ways to express their condolences. In fact, I know for a certainty that the people of this city and this province will do everything they can to show their support for these officers and their families. Will the province be planning a memorial or another way for the public to pay their respects and share their grief?
The Minister.
Thank you very much. Of course, the overwhelming support across this country has been amazing. Our government is going to continue to work with EPS to pay our respects to Constable Travis Jordan and Constable Brett Ryan in, of course, the appropriate manner. We're going to support EPS on memorial remembrance opportunities. The officers' names will be included in the Pillar of Strength monument on the south grounds of the legislature, and their names, of course, are going to be part of the honor roll read out at Police and Peace Officer Memorial Day. The families are also presented with copies of the dove-shaped plaques inscribed with the officers' names and placed on the monument. I can tell you there are lots of ways we're going to support and remember these 2 officers. Right now, we're going to support these families right now.
The honourable member for Calgary, Boular-McCall has a question to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are all shocked by the death of 2 Edmonton police officers earlier today. As critic for justice and public safety, I join my colleagues on both sides of this House to extend my deepest condolences to the loved one of Constable Travis Jordan and Constable Brett Ryan, and to their fellow officers at Edmonton Police Service and across this province. Can the Premier update this House on what supports are available to those grieving this loss?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services.
Well, thank you very much. I think we're very fortunate that the Edmonton Police Service, along with the Edmonton Police Association, have been extremely supportive. I have seen them. They are there for those families who have been grief-stricken over the deaths of these officers. Not to mention the police officers that I saw earlier today also have been extremely grief-stricken. I can tell you we are working very closely with the Edmonton Police Service and the Edmonton Police Association to ensure whatever supports they need are available to them.
The honourable member.
Thank you, Minister, for that answer. The second sudden loss of 2 officers will reopen painful memories for many Albertans. Alberta has lost many brave officers and first responders in the line of duty. Many people in my community are reminded of the death of Calgary Police Sergeant Andrew Harnett on New Year's Eve in 2020. Can the Minister talk about mental health supports that are available to first responders, former first responders, and their families who will certainly be impacted by this tragedy?
The Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services.
I thank you. I'll let the Minister speak. Let me just say this. Sergeant Andrew Harnett was a constable when I was a sergeant within the Calgary Police Service, and I would thank you for bringing that up. It was a very tragic event for the officers that I worked with. Obviously, the death of that officer is horrific. Any death is horrific. And I'll just say this, every one of us here has to learn lessons from these tragic events to make sure that they don't happen again. And I will say, on behalf of the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, there are enormous supports that are available to help these families, to help these police services. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Calgary, Boular-McCall.
Thank you, Minister, for that answer, and I do know that you have served on the front line, so I realize that only a few hours have passed, but many Albertans are looking for ways to express their support for Edmonton Police Service, their colleagues, and loved ones of those fallen officers. And before the details of a memorial services are available, can you share with Albertans that how they can express support for Edmonton Police Service of those who have lost their loved ones?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you. I think at this time, if people want to express their condolences, I would recommend that they reach out to the Edmonton Police Service. Let me just say this, and this was brought up today at the press conference. If you see a police officer, thank them. Thank them for the service. Thank them for what they do. And I would say that is a first step in the right direction. But certainly if you would like to express your condolences, then certainly reach out to the Edmonton Police Service. I know that they have a big heart and they would probably really appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Glenora has a question.
I too want to express my condolences for everyone impacted by the brutal killings this morning, including the families and colleagues of Constables Jordan and Ryan. Mr. Speaker, many of my constituents have contacted me to ask about why they're not eligible for the government's affordability payments despite financial hardship that they are going through. Less than a quarter of Albertans have received payments so far. Will the Premier consider expanding eligibility to help low-income folks who don't have children?
The Minister of Transportation and Economic Corridors has risen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd also like to provide condolences to the families. The senseless violence that happened last night. In response to the question, though, the first 24 hours of the affordability portal, when it did open, 140,000 applications came through. That's 140,000 Albertans that were receiving this payment. It is something that's $100 a month going towards those who need supports the most. And it is something that we've worked very hard to make sure that everybody is receiving this payment that can get the payment. And it is something that we on this side of the aisle obviously know when it comes to inflation and the cost of living. It's something that we try as a government very hard to reduce, and that's why we have low taxes. We've fought the carbon tax and other measures that have increased the cost of living in Alberta and are continuing to find ways to make life more affordable in Alberta.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Glenora.
Mr. Speaker, when these payments were first announced, the government said that it would cost approximately $900 million in payments to Albertans. However, last month they confirmed that only $96 million had actually been paid out to Albertans. We know that there are hundreds of thousands of Albertans who are eligible under the already limited criteria who could really use the help. So, to the government, why have so few Albertans received affordability payments?
The Honourable the Minister of Transportation and Economic Corridors.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I would like to remind the opposition and tell all Albertans that when it comes to the fuel tax being removed permanently here in Alberta, that goes a long way of helping Alberta families get to work, drive to work, and drive their kids to soccer or hockey practice. And also the electricity rebate is also going to all Albertans. So there's a suite of measures that our government put in place to try to help with this inflation crisis that's hitting every single Alberta family. And those are two examples that help every single Albertan, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member.
Mr. Speaker, we know that the application process for these payments isn't easy for some Albertans. While many have applied, many applications require edits to make them eligible. Registry agents have told us that there isn't an edit button so people can make changes to their applications, and on Monday in estimates, the Minister for Service Alberta acknowledged this issue. We are already halfway through the eligibility period, and this edit button can make a difference for people struggling to pay their bills this month. So will the Premier commit that an edit button will be added by the end of the month and that everyone eligible will get compensation for the months that have already passed?
The Honourable the Minister of Innovation and Technology.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as the Minister responsible for the team that is building out the functionality of this portal, I'm happy to respond. It's a thoughtful question. I want to highlight that an edit button has been added already for individual applicants, so that if there's an individual Albertan who had an issue with getting their banking information signed up for direct deposit, they can correct that already on the portal, and I encourage them to visit the portal to do that. In terms of now developing that and extending that edit function to registries who then support folks face-to-face, that is in the works, and it will be done very soon, and we'll be happy to update this House when that's the case. I do also just want to highlight that over 1.1 million Albertans have successfully
Honourable Member for Edmonton Decor.
Firefighters endure great risks to serve our communities. Some of those risks are immediate, but others develop over time, which is why presumptive coverage and retroactive coverage are vital to ensure those who protect us are protected too. Other provinces know this, and in fact, Ontario has recently provided presumptive coverage retroactive back to January 1960. Is the Premier aware of this retroactive presumptive coverage Ontario has provided to their firefighters?
The Honourable the Minister of the Environment and Protected Areas.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It appears the NDP are claiming that our government doesn't care about first responders. This is a retroactivity issue, Mr. Speaker. It's an issue that their government never addressed. Our government has done a thorough review. The WCB has done a thorough review. There is exactly one case that might be impacted by retroactivity. That individual passed while the NDP were in government, and the NDP did not alter the law. While our hearts go out to that family, the specific case is so complicated that the NDP knows as well that it remains clear that...
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Decor.
As Ontario's decision demonstrates, we have the power to help Alberta firefighters diagnosed with cancer and their families, including those already locked into disputes with WCB. In fact, Ontario government has provided this coverage retroactive all the way back to 1960. It's an easy decision to make, one that provides vital protection, and thanks to first responders. Does the Premier agree that if Ontario can provide this level of protection to all firefighters, surely Alberta can do as much for the heroes of the 2016 Fort McMurray fire?
The Honourable the Minister of Environment and Protected Areas.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. We find that it remains unclear whether retroactivity would have helped in this circumstances. The WCB has a fairness office that is handling this complex case. That's how it's been handled in the past. How it's been handled with other governments, and that's the way it needs to be handled.
Firefighters who fought the Fort McMurray wildfires are heroes who deserve our unequivocal support, and not a single one should be left out of coverage for cancers they face as a result of heroism during that fire. Making sure this bill has retroactive coverage is the least we can do, and Ontario has now shown that it can be done. To the Premier, can we agree that these firefighters deserve our thanks and support, and can we agree to amend Bill 9 as the opposition has proposed?
The Honourable the Minister of Environment and Protected Areas.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's no question that the firefighters deserve our thanks and our help, and that's why, Mr. Speaker, we've done a thorough review. There is one case that might, and I say might, be impacted by retroactivity, and that individual has already passed. Mr. Speaker, Alberta is it's the leader on protecting firefighters. We'll soon be making changes to expand our leadership on this issue. And Mr. Speaker, again, the policy is complex, and retroactivity risks creating more unfairness than it solves.
The Honourable Member for Peace River has a question.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. As children in government care become adults, they often are left wondering how they will be able to fend for themselves as they prepare to start their life on their own. The Transition to Adulthood Program, or TAP, within Children's Services provides the supports they need to succeed now and into the future. To my colleague, the Minister of Children's Services, could you please rise and let the House know about the supports available for TAP in Budget 2023 to help young Albertans in care and those leaving it in building an independent, healthy life?
The Honourable the Minister of Children's Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and if you would so indulge me, I too would like to express my sincerest condolences to the families and indeed all Albertans impacted by the tragedy we heard today. Budget 2023 is an investment in our future. By investing in the future of youth and young adults transitioning out of care, we are investing in future prosperity for this province, and that's exactly why I was proud to announce that we are investing an additional $25.6 million to the Transition into Adulthood program as part of the Children's Services Ministries in the next 3 years to support young adults transitioning out of government care and into adulthood.
The Honourable Member for Peace River.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given that youth leaving from care often lack the network needed to find good employers to sponsor them for entry into apprenticeship education programs, and given that these young adults experience training and employment barriers compared to their peers, to the same minister, could you please let us know what additional funding is available in the budget to help them find jobs with in-demand trades?
The Honourable the Minister of Children's Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to the Honourable Member for the question. In addition to the $25.6 million that we've allocated, I was pleased to announce, along with my colleague and Deputy Premier and Minister of Skilled Trades and Professions, an additional $2.5 million, which will be allocated to support youths in transition to further develop their skills and careers in the trades as well. This will benefit approximately 500 youths transitioning out of government care and into their future educational pursuits.
The Honourable Member.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given that youth in care have been looking forward to this kind of support to help them succeed, and further given that it aligns perfectly with the views of the child advocate of this legislature, to the Minister, what is this government's plan to make sure that these children and kids continue to access the supports they need as they age out of care?
Honourable Minister of Children's Services.
Mr. Speaker, we recognize the value that this tremendously important and incredibly well-received program has been providing, and the Honourable Member is indeed correct. It does align with many of the views of the advocate, and it is because of these reasons that we have committed funding increases for the next 3 years, with $5.5 million allocated in this year's 2023-2024 budget, $8.5 million for 24-25, and finally $11.6 million for the 25-26 years. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton-Whitemud has a question to ask.
Thank you. As an Edmontonian, I'm very grateful for the brave service of the Edmonton Police Service and the women and men who are officers, and I send my deepest condolences to the family and the friends and the colleagues of Constable Jordan and Constable Ryan. Mr. Speaker, one of the hardest parts of my role as the critic for Children's Services, but even more as a mother, is to every month see the growing list of children and young people who have died while receiving child intervention services. Last year was the worst year on record in Alberta. 49 children and young people died. We all hoped we wouldn't see another year like it. But this year is no better. To date, 45 children and young people have died. To the Minister of Children's Services, what is being done differently, truly differently, to make a change?
The Honourable the Minister of Children's Services.
Mr. Speaker, once again, as a father of 3 young children, there is no greater tragedy than hearing about the death of any child. And once again, my heart and my condolences go out to the families that are impacted by this. As the honourable member is indeed aware, any child receiving intervention services and who dies or is seriously injured is reported publicly. And we conduct a rigorous and thorough examination of exactly what happened. Alberta is a leader in public reporting, Mr. Speaker, and that includes posting online when a child or youth has passed away in care or is receiving services, and publicly posting online children's services.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Whitemud.
Given that of the 45 deaths this year to date, 19 of them were actually children under the age of 12. And given that 18 of these children were actually in the care of Children's Services, the government is their legal guardian. And given that any loss of life is a tragedy, and as a member of this chamber, we all owe a responsibility to ensure that every child in care has the support, services, and resources they need to thrive. And given that there have been reviews and reports and promises for 2 years, can the Minister explain what specifically this budget does differently for children in care to ensure that they are supported and, most importantly, safe?
The Honourable the Minister of Children's Services.
Mr. Speaker, an increasing number of youth have died as a result of drug poisoning, leading to the Child and Youth Advocate recommendation that the government establish a specific youth opioid strategy, and that's exactly what we've done. Recently, the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions announced a number of initiatives, including a $4.5 million investment into the virtual opioid program, a dependency program, as well as a $92 million investment in CASA for kids, which is certainly helping to address these troubling concerns. Thank you.
The Honourable Member.
Given that yesterday the government announced a $5.5 million increase in funding for youth aging out of government care into the Transition to Adulthood program, but this doesn't make up for the $14 million per year that was cut 3 years ago, and given that today we heard that only 120 young people aged 22 to 24 are receiving supports under TAP, and this is a big decrease from the 500 of young people of the same age who receive financial supports under the SAFA program, and given this means that far fewer young people transitioning out of care into adulthood are actually being supported by this government, can the Minister please explain what he is doing to increase the number of young people accessing the TAP program?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what the Honourable Member failed to mention was that she heard that 120 children were receiving soft supports, but that many others had already been transitioned into the TAP program. And so certainly that is a good news story, regardless of how the member wishes to spin it. We are working diligently to expand and increase the TAP program as a holistic and comprehensive approach to addressing youth aging out of care and into adulthood. And we'll continue to do that through the supports that we have just elaborated on through the various member statements and the questions prior. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton-McClung has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to start by offering my condolences to the families, friends, and colleagues of the 2 Edmonton police officers who lost their lives today. Mr. Speaker, Albertans rely on our emergency alert system to keep them safe, but they need to know it will be there when tragedy strikes. This requires regular testing so Albertans and our government know it will work. On March 1st, the system was tested, but Albertans didn't get just one alert. They received a total of 9 alerts. This left Albertans with a lot of questions about what happened, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister, can you explain what happened with the emergency alert system that day?
The Honourable the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions has risen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the question. I would also take this opportunity to extend my deepest sympathies to the families, friends, and colleagues of constables Travis Jordan and Brett Ryan. With regards to the exacts on the 9 versus however many certain people received, I'll undertake to make sure that I get those for the Honourable Member. I do want to just take an opportunity for the Honourable Member for Calgary-McCall and mention that the mental health helpline 1-877-303-2642 and then also 211 is also available 24 hours a day for individuals. So, thank you.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton-McClung.
Given that the Premier suggested the issues came from other government agencies, but we know that's not accurate, and given that media now reports that it was, quote, old code that caused the problem on the provincial side, and given that the alert is critical in ensuring the health and safety of Albertans in the event of an emergency, what steps have been taken to fix this problem?
The Honourable the Minister of Technology and Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, I want to just say, again, thank you for this line of questioning. I, like many Albertans, was surprised when I saw the numerous alerts back to back on the day in question. And I want to assure all Albertans that when I saw that happen, I immediately reached out to my colleague, the Minister of Public Safety, to offer the support of my department, Technology and Innovation, to look at ways that we can apply more modern tools and technology to ensure that this kind of situation does not happen again. The fact is, Albertans need to know that they can rely on this alert system, and we are going to take all of the steps needed to make sure that our systems can deliver that exact result.
The Honourable Member.
Given that Albertans need to know the system will be there when they need it, and given that there was a glitch in a previous test, and given that the Minister says it has been fixed, what lessons did the government learn from this test, and will there be another test of the system in the near future after these problems are resolved to ensure that it's actually working the way it's supposed to?
The Honourable Minister of Technology and Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, we always look to learn from all of our experiences, good and bad, and so we are certainly taking a look into this situation to make sure that our public alert system will be as strong as it possibly can be. And as I mentioned before, my department at Technology and Innovation will be supporting the Minister of Public Safety and his team to make sure that we take whatever steps are necessary to ensure that the system is strong, robust, and capable and secure so that we can meet the needs of Albertans today and into the future.
The Honourable Member for Cypress Medicine Hat has a question to ask.
Mr. Speaker, my condolences to the families and friends of Constable Jordan and Constable Ryan, the entire Edmonton Police Service, and my thanks to everyone involved in public safety and policing to safely protect us all. Mr. Speaker, it has also come to my attention there is presently a sizable group of freedom-minded Ontario physicians willing to relocate to Alberta. Given that our communities are crying out for doctors, particularly in the South Zone, Mr. Speaker, given that as March 3rd in Medicine Hat, we're 18 available physicians short, including 5 in family medicine and 3 in emergency medicine. To the Health Minister, please share with us what you are willing to do to cut through the red tape to accommodate a group of dedicated medical professionals.
The Honourable the Minister of Finance has risen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know the Minister of Health is actively looking at every option, every solution to ensure that we have an adequate number of physicians working and serving Albertans. Mr. Speaker, that's one reason why we increased a health budget by almost $1 billion this year. Mr. Speaker, there will be funding for additional seats for every healthcare occupation, including 120 new seats over the 3-year fiscal plan in our schools of medicine.
The Honourable the Member for Cypress Medicine Hat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Attracting doctors is about more than spending money, however. Given that physician shortages in Alberta have become a systemic issue, and given that on February 6th, the City of Lethbridge had 49 doctor position vacancies, including 9 in family medicine and 8 in emergency, and given the fact that physician compensation and development now account for nearly 25% of our total health budget, is the Minister really in a position to turn away any qualified, experienced, out-of-province doctors who want to practice in Alberta?
The Honourable the Minister of Finance.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I know the Minister, again, is looking at every solution to ensure that we can onboard healthcare professionals, foreign-trained healthcare professionals from other provinces and other countries, Mr. Speaker. But on top of that, we are creating more spaces here in the province, so Albertans who want to pursue a career in healthcare can in fact do so. Mr. Speaker, we are focused as a government on expanding capacity in healthcare.
Member for Cypress Medicine Hat.
Mr. Speaker, more money is not buying results. And given that all the taxpayer money that this government has dumped into rural physician recruitment and retention, and given that physician compensation now accounts for nearly 10% of this government's total operational spending, and given the fact that over the past 2 years, numerous emergency rooms across Alberta have been temporarily closed due to physician shortages, is this minister finally willing to consider options for physician recruitment that don't involve the failed strategy of just throwing more hard-earned taxpayers' money at it?
The Honourable the Minister of Finance, President, Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, we do need to pay our doctors. And I'm pleased to say that the Minister of Health has struck an agreement with the Alberta Medical Association on a new remuneration agreement with our incredible physicians, Mr. Speaker, those physicians that serve Albertans every day. And I know the Minister is again looking at every solution to ensure that we can provide more physicians across the province in rural Alberta and urban Alberta, Mr. Speaker. In fact, there are 250 more doctors working at the end of 2022 than at the beginning, but our work's not done.
The Honourable the Member for St. Albert has a question.
I'd also like to add my condolences to Constables Jordan and Ryan, their families, friends, and first responder community. Nonprofits fill critical needs, employ nearly 300,000 Albertans, contribute $5.5 billion to the economy, and another $5 billion in volunteer hours. They're struggling right now. The essential workers putting the needs of the communities first are suffering. An analysis by the Calgary Chamber of Voluntary Organizations shows instability. Will the minister rise in this House and tell us what this government is doing to support nonprofits and the critical work that they do?
The Honourable the Minister of Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm speaking with heavy heart. I also want to acknowledge my condolences for the families and for the fallen officers before I answer this question. Mr. Speaker, the question of helping nonprofits to do more is a real one. And just for your information, I have the honor of working as a social worker in the field for over 28 years. I worked with CCVO in my past, so the advocacy they're advancing for the sector, we wholeheartedly support that. It is because of that reason we increased 11 million support for CPAF in this budget 2023.
The Honourable Member for St. Albert.
Given that many organizations are facing higher demand, 74% reporting an increase in need and lack of supports for programs with complex needs, and that 41% identified significant reduction in capacity. And given the current affordability crisis has major impacts in this sector, with 88% citing inflation as a massive concern, with insurance going as high as 150%, forcing downsizing and layoffs, while funding agreements are not keeping pace with population growth and inflation. Why does this budget not do more to ensure a better future for the 30,000 nonprofits in Alberta?
The Honourable the Minister of Seniors, Community and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member for her advocacy for not-for-profits. I'm so proud of Budget 2023-2024 because there is significant funds available for not-for-profits within this budget. Specifically within my ministry, we increased funding for the PDD sector. We increased significant funding for homeless shelters and homeless outreach programs. We increased money for seniors and senior groups, as well as increased funds with FCSS. All of these groups do significant work. I've been spending a lot of my time meeting with not-for-profits across the province. We want to continue to work with them and improve supports as we go forward.
The Honourable Member for St. Albert.
Given that Karen Ball, President and CEO of the Calgary Chamber of Voluntary Organizations, stated, and I quote, "When nonprofits fail, so does our society." And given that I urge this government to listen to their needs and make a definite commitment to work alongside them and provide more fiscal assistance than the small amounts we see in Budget 2023, will the minister commit to working with groups like the Calgary Chamber of Voluntary Organizations to ensure nonprofits get the resources they need to continue the vital and essential work in Alberta?
The Honourable the Minister of Seniors, Community and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And of course, the answer to that question is yes. Karen Ball is actually a constituent and a friend of mine. We do talk. Actually, I'm scheduled to give her a call later this afternoon. Of course, want to continue to part with our not-for-profits. We've seen significant work within 2023, not just in my ministry, but in children's services, in culture, in health, in justice, in education. There's increased funding right across the board for not-for-profits in our community. We're going to continue to make sure that we're funding these great organizations, that we're getting resources deployed. I also want to mention the I'll answer more later, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Edmonton Ellerslie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to offer my condolences to the family and friends of Constables Jordan and Ryan and all first responders being affected by what's going on. Mr. Speaker, Edmonton Public Schools expect a 2.7% increase in enrollment for this upcoming year. By 2027, there will not be enough space for all high school students in the city. We all know schools take time to build, and we have all known about forecasted enrollment growth in Edmonton schools. So to the Minister, why has this government only provided full construction funding for one new school in Edmonton this year?
The Honourable the Minister of Education has risen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And first, I want to offer my condolences and prayers as well to the family and friends and all those that are impacted by the deaths. As a mother, pardon me, as a mother of a police officer myself, it's my worst nightmare that I can think of. It's the worst thing I can possibly think of, to lose one of my children in such a way, and so my heart goes out to all of them. On the question that was asked, in fact, the member opposite is incorrect. We have allocated and announced 5 new schools for Edmonton Public School Division, the new junior senior high in Glen Riding Heights, a new K-9 school in Edgemont, a new K-6 in
The honourable member for Edmonton Ellerslie.
Given that I was speaking about high schools and it takes time to build a school and modernization of existing schools only leads to a slight increase in capacity, and given that government has made it clear in their capital plan that they do not think Edmonton deserves more schools for a growing student population, and given the critical need for more student spaces with thousands of new students expected to start attending school in Edmonton, will the Minister please explain how they plan to address the growing need for more space in Edmonton schools with only one new school planned in this budget?
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I guess the member opposite did not know that Edmonton Public Schools actually had 2 new high schools, one that is opening in May of 2024, the Southeast High School, and the Joey Moss School as well is slated, actually just opened here, I believe, in September of 2022. Those in addition to the other schools that have been allocated in the future. We can say that over the last number of years that we have announced 18 projects for Edmonton that will address these needs.
The honourable member for Edmonton Ellerslie.
Given that the government should be investing in maintaining top quality education in the province, and given that to this end, students must have the space they need to learn, which means building new schools is an absolute necessity, and given that only one new school received construction funding, leaving many in my constituency to ride the bus out of their communities, will the Minister commit to restarting public reporting of class sizes as student numbers rise much faster than the number of classrooms in Edmonton?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, the member opposite's incorrect. We've allocated 18 projects overall to Edmonton, and while the NDP during their 4 years only allocated 8 projects, Mr. Speaker, I would say that our record as a whole over the last 4 years is 106 schools across this province, new infrastructure. We're 58 alone this year. The members opposite during their time period, only 47, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, they failed rural Alberta. When we allocated 37 schools, they only allocated 14.
The honourable member for Calgary Pagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to offer my deepest condolences to the friends, family and colleagues of Constables Jordan and Ryan and the terrible tragedy that they're going through right now. Mr. Speaker, our government recognizes and supports the important role transportation infrastructure plays in building our province's economic corridors and communities. In acknowledging that role, we must include one road that my constituents of Calgary Pagan know far too well, Deerfoot Trail. Deerfoot Trail is currently the busiest road in Alberta, and both daily commuters and businesses are feeling the pains of this. Can the Minister of Transportation and Economic Corridors inform the House of the important contributions that our government is taking to improve Deerfoot Trail?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Economic Corridors.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And it is tragic events like we all heard about today that really do put things into perspective. But regarding the question, Calgary did receive $2.2 billion in budget 2023. $430 million actually went towards upgrades to Deerfoot Trail. And just last November, we actually announced significant improvements on the south side of Deerfoot Trail, improving the Bow Bottom Trail and Anderson Road, Southline Drive, and Glenmore Trail interchanges. 7 new bridge structures, Mr. Speaker, are going to be built on the Deerfoot, and construction will begin this spring.
The honourable member for Calgary-Hagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think everyone in Alberta who's driven on Deerfoot Trail can agree that this is a welcomed investment to improve our province's busiest road. Given that these improvements to Deerfoot Trail would further develop Alberta's economy, can the minister tell the House about how these investments into Deerfoot Trail will drive our economy forward?
The Honourable the Minister of Transportation and Economic Corridors.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hundreds of jobs indirectly will be created by the improvements to the construction work on Deerfoot. Deerfoot is obviously a major trade route through the province of Alberta, shipping goods not just from the airport but up and down Highway 2 throughout the province. And the economic benefits of improving the Deerfoot from Bow Bottom Trail to Glenmore Trail will provide about a $23 million economic boost to the province, but also, Mr. Speaker, allowing Calgarians to be able to get home sooner to spend more time with their families.
The honourable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given that those who use Deerfoot Trail daily are not limited to the semi-trucks that keep our grocery shelves stocked and help our local businesses take goods to market, and given that there are many thousands of people that use Deerfoot Trail daily, whether it's to go to school or going to and from work, can the same minister tell the House about how the Deerfoot Trail upgrades will benefit Albertans who commute daily on this road?
The minister.
Well, obviously, Mr. Speaker, we are committed to making lives better here in the province of Alberta, and Calgary commuters will actually see a 15% improvement in their morning rush hour commute and also a 22% improvement in their evening rush hour commute, Mr. Speaker, once this construction is done. And in total, that means about 900,000 hours a year will be saved with the completion of these Deerfoot Trail improvements. And Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, that just means Calgarians will be able to spend more time with their families and less time staring at taillights.
The honourable member for Edmonton Riverview is next.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and along with my colleagues in this House, I'd like to give my condolences to the families of Constables Jordan and Ryan, and of course also acknowledge their friends and colleagues. Alberta seniors deserve a dedicated seniors advocate. This role was created to ensure that the voices and concerns of Alberta's seniors would be heard by the government. I was disappointed that the UCP terminated the position of the seniors advocate. The recent report of the Auditor General shows the negative impact of COVID-19 pandemic on seniors, and that there is a need for seniors to have a dedicated, independent voice. Will the minister support the re-establishment of an independent seniors advocate?
The Honourable the Minister of Seniors, Community and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the member for her question and her advocacy for seniors. Of course, this government cares about our seniors. We want to make sure that our seniors are supported and that they do have an advocate. And the good news is, Mr. Speaker, seniors do have an advocate within the Health Advocacy Office who is speaking on behalf of senior issues and concerns. Part of the reason why we merged these two offices is because over a third of the concerns that were coming into the seniors advocate were health related. And so by merging these two offices together, we're actually able to better serve seniors to make sure that their concerns are being addressed. As we go forward, there's going to need to be a strong relationship between the Minister of Seniors and the Minister of Health to address these issues.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Riverview.
Given that this budget proposes a 2.4% increase in accommodation rates for seniors in continuing care, and given that this increase comes during a cost of living crisis, which could mean families face difficult choices between paying their bills while ensuring that their family member is being cared for, given that as we deal with this affordability crisis, ensuring that the seniors who built this province have the support they need is critical, will the minister reverse this proposed increase in accommodation rates?
The Honourable the Minister of Seniors, Community and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and again to the member for her question and her advocacy. This government is taking action in regards to addressing affordability challenges for seniors. Indexing senior benefits as well as supplementary benefits was a big part of that, but also bringing in the affordability payments to help seniors get through this affordability crisis. We're also working towards expanding out affordable housing for seniors right across this province in the communities that seniors have raised their families and built their lives in. We know how important this is, and we're going to continue to work with the community, our not-for-profit partners and housing providers to improve affordability for our seniors.
The honourable member.
Given that Albertans are in the debt of the seniors who built this province, and we in this House need to provide them with the support that they need, and given that seniors' voices should be heard by their elected representatives, Minister, please explain what steps are being taken to ensure that no seniors fall through the cracks during this affordability crisis. When will the Minister reinstate the office of the Seniors Advocate?
The Honourable Minister of Seniors, Community and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and again to the member for the question. Of course, we are making sure that seniors' voices are heard through the Health Advocate's Office, through the Senior Advocate within the Health Advocate's Office, to make sure that the concerns that seniors have that they're able to present that to the Health Advocacy Office. Of course, compiling that data to help inform government on how best we move forward and to make sure that seniors' concerns are being addressed in this community. We are committed to improving the lives for our seniors, and Budget 2023-2024 has significant investments in addressing affordability and providing additional supports for our seniors. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Northwest.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would just like to begin by offering my condolences to the family, friends, and colleagues of the fallen officers who passed away today. Yesterday, I had the honor of introducing Bill 207, the Jobs Investment Incentive Proposal Act. If passed, the bill would direct the minister to develop a tax credit that would provide investment incentives to companies making capital investments in clean tech, carbon materials, critical minerals processing, and advanced manufacturing. The bill is targeted towards the fastest growing emerging sectors where Alberta has the opportunity to compete on a global scale and bring these opportunities right here to Alberta. And so for all of these reasons, I would ask, would the government consider supporting Bill 207?
The Honourable the Minister of Finance, the President of Treasury Board.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and appreciate the member opposite, putting forward a bill that he believes will further Alberta's economic growth and diversification. Mr. Speaker, that goal, that objective has been the objective of this government since day one in 2019. That's why, Mr. Speaker, we worked hard to create the most competitive business environment of any province in the nation. We started out by reducing our business tax rate from 12 to 8%, Mr. Speaker. We've been focused on reducing red tape, and Mr. Speaker, our plan is working. Our business environment is competitive, and investment is coming.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Northwest.
Well, Mr. Speaker, given that the competition for investment in new emerging sectors is increasing after the United States passed the Inflation Reduction Act, and given that Alberta has some of the lowest capital investment growth in the country, our proposed tax credit is estimated to leverage a projected $10 billion in incremental investments and will create an estimated 20,000 jobs. And so I would ask, why would the government continue with their tax cuts when we know that, in fact, tax credits allow growth and compel growth in the province for Albertans and for our economy?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we believe that broadly creating a competitive business environment is really government's role and responsibility. Now, we're also believe that where we have sectors where we're naturally competitive and we're competing with other jurisdictions, that at times specific incentives and tax credits are worthy. And Mr. Speaker, that's why we brought in the Alberta Petrochemical Incentive Program. That's a targeted tax incentive grant program, Mr. Speaker, that is attracting interest from investors around the world. Mr. Speaker, we have tens of billions of dollars investment lined up to come into the sector in Alberta.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Northwest.
Well, Mr. Speaker, given that Bill 207's incentives are also designed in a way that allow for good-paying jobs, support innovation, and provides training so that Albertans get the necessary skills to work in these sectors. And given that Alberta currently has the slowest wage growth in the country, will the government then support Bill 207 as a means of accelerating wage growth for Albertans using tax credits rather than tax cuts?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I know the members opposite dislike tax cuts. That's abundantly apparent. But, Mr. Speaker, in Budget 2022, We allocated $600 million for skills and jobs. We've added to that in Budget 23 with over $300 million, again, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that Albertans can step into training opportunities, to ensure that all Albertans can be skilled to flourish in the economy of the future, Mr. Speaker. Every Albertan needs to participate in the Alberta Advantage.
The honourable member for Camrose.
My deepest condolences to the family, friends and co-workers of the fallen officers. The Just Transition Plan to phase out oil and gas will harm not only my constituents, but oil and gas workers across our province. An important dividing line between the provinces and the federal government is that natural resources and their development fall under provincial jurisdiction. Gibson Energy claims 1 of 4 barrels exported from Western Canada runs through Hardisty. To the Minister of Energy, will the provincial government be prepared to defend and protect our constitutional rights and maintain and develop our own oil and gas industry?
The Honourable the Minister of Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is not the first time that we've seen devastating policies from Ottawa for our energy industry. The key phrase here is constitutional rights. Alberta has a long history of protecting those constitutional rights. Let's take a walk down memory lane. Whether that's Peter Lougheed fighting against Justin Trudeau's father and his national energy program, or Justin, the drama teacher, Trudeau's terrible Just Transition Plan, I assure you we are doing and will continue to do everything to guarantee that our rights remain our rights.
The honourable member for Camrose.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Minister. Given that Ottawa's Just Transition Plan is clearly to hinder Alberta's production of oil and gas, and further given that there is an ongoing energy crisis where energy is a necessary part of life, from heating our homes to fueling our cars, to the Minister of Energy, is the Government of Alberta prepared to export our morally and responsibly sourced energy to the world struggling with energy security?
The Honourable the Minister of Energy.
Mr. Speaker, here in Alberta, we produce the most reliable, responsible, and secure energy of anywhere in the world. Recent events have made it clear that energy security is a huge priority for jurisdictions like Germany, Japan, and South Korea. Last year, the German Chancellor came to Canada looking for Canadian LNG, and Justin Trudeau turned him down. I recently visited Germany and Norway to advocate for Alberta because Ottawa clearly doesn't have the compassion or the best interest of Albertans, or Canadians for that matter, in mind. The world needs more Alberta energy.
The honourable member for Camrose.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for the answer. Given that Justin Trudeau has gone down the path of just transition, and given that others support this misdirected notion, to the Minister of Energy, how has Alberta contributed to the welfare and well-being of the rest of the country?
The Honourable the Minister of Energy.
Mr. Speaker, there are approximately 2,500 coal plants operating globally right now, with 189 under construction, many of which are located in China. Our responsible, reliable, and ESG-leading energy, especially our natural gas, can offset increasing global emissions if we can move those coal plants to Alberta LNG. We contribute leadership, technological innovation, and the highest standard of ESG throughout the world. We should be, and are, the standard that every other country tries to live up to. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, this concludes the time allotted for oral question period. In 30 seconds or less, we will continue to the remainder of member statements. Ready? No, it's okay, it's okay. The honourable member for Edmonton Northwest.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm honoured to be a representative in this chamber of Alberta's great capital city of Edmonton. As MLA for Edmonton Northwest, I have seen Edmonton grow and develop into a great Canadian city that it is today, with endless potential for the future. However, this is certainly not by accident. Through partnerships at all levels of government, down to the community level, Edmonton has been able to build a welcoming home for thousands of people who move here every year. It is critical that we do not let up in this effort, Mr. Speaker. We need to ensure by investing in Edmonton, by building schools and hospitals, and also supporting nonprofits who serve this city. We need to continue to invest to ensure that our city's most vulnerable are supported in every way. And importantly, the city needs a partner in the legislature to ensure that these needs are acted on. I was proud to be part of a government that was such a partner to the city and the people of Edmonton, and I will never stop advocating for Edmonton and the people who call it home, because when Edmonton succeeds, Alberta succeeds too. Thank you.
The honourable member for Calgary-Beddington has a statement to make.
Thank you, Mr. Speakers. Our men and women in uniform are heroes. It hit me very hard to learn that just after the midnight this morning, Edmonton Police Service response to a family dispute in the northwest Edmonton, and 2 police officers were killed in the line of duty. 2 young EPS regents, 35 years old Constable Trevor Jordan and a 30 years old Brett Ryan, did not come home to their family after their night shift this morning. Throughout the details of this horrifying act are not yet known. We know that the officers' colleagues rushed them to these heroes to the hospital and worked bravely to save these members, but sadly, they were declared dead in the hospital. I can tell you without any hesitation, Mr. Speakers, that I started with the Premier, the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services, a former police officer himself, and all of my colleagues in these chambers in full of unity with these heroes in uniform, as well as the family and friends that have lost their loved ones this morning. Mr. Speaker, the first priority after this tragedy for all of us should be to support these 2 heroes of mourning, friends, family, and colleagues in EPS in any that we can. And the next one should be to do whatever we need to keep a tragedy like this from happening again. Mr. Speaker, the Alberta government always stands proudly with our men and women in uniform, a career that all too often, I'm sure, feels a thankness. So I'm going to say right now, with no reservations on behalf of my colleague in the Alberta legislature, thank you.
The honourable member for Lacombe-Panoka.
Mr. Speaker, in the last few months, Ottawa has once again misunderstood Alberta with their paternalistic just transition. It's not surprising, but it is frustrating and disappointing. At a time when our international allies are suffering due to lack of access to essential oil and gas energy, with people in Europe burdened by astronomically high prices, the NDP Liberal government not only refuses to send them what they need, but simultaneously seeks to dismantle Alberta's industry and jobs. Just transition is a proposal could not be more ill-timed or falsely named. The colonial Ottawa Liberals are blinded by an agenda that has little bearing on reality, and in its pursuit are happy to afflict Albertans with joblessness by way of a government crusade against the industry that literally fuels our nation's economy. It's one thing to promote the positive benefits of a green energy technology, a sector Alberta has embraced as a leader. It's another thing entirely for an NDP Liberal coalition to institute top-down bans and restrictions on an industry that constitutes the lifeblood of modern civilization. As Alberta moves diligently towards a low-carbon future, it is undeniable that oil and gas produced here is among the most ethically sourced in the entire world. But the woke would sooner import oil from dictatorships produced with zero environmental standards. As we continue to innovate and diversify our economy here, it would be foolish and short-sighted for Ottawa to abandon, or rather eliminate, Alberta's fuel industry with a stroke of a pen. Our allies are in desperate need of these resources, and developing nations will continue to source energy somewhere as they grow their economies and improve their people's quality of life. Not only would just transition destroy hundreds of thousands of jobs and set Alberta and Canada's economy back for a generation, but it would also be clearly unjust to continue refusing our allies and developing nations the basic energy supplies that they so desperately need. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Edmonton Decore.
Firefighters are our heroes. They keep our communities, our cities, and our province safe from fires, as well as many other hazards. They protect our families, friends, and loved ones from danger, and they risk their lives in the process. I thank them for their continued service, but I know that words are simply not enough. Not when the realities of their job can lead them to develop cancer. The Fort McMurray wildfire shook our province. It was devastating, but I'm proud of the way Albertans rallied around each other to offer support during this time. Albertans did everything they could, from fundraising to donating needed items to opening their homes, all while Alberta firefighters did everything they could to stop the fire as quickly as possible. So it is hard now to see the ways in which the spirit of community care, friendship, and support seems to have fallen away, and in its place has been an unnecessary fight when coverage should be provided and to whom. We have the power here and now to end these disputes and do the right thing. To make sure Bill 9 includes retroactive coverage for cancer firefighters develop as a result of their job, as the province of Ontario did earlier this month. So I want to remind the UCP that this support is possible, that we have the amendment at the ready to correct this wrong and align Alberta's policy with provinces like Ontario. Our firefighters have given us so much. Let's work together and provide them with retroactive coverage. It's just the right thing to do.
Go ahead, Shannon.
Standing in special committees. Presenting petitions.
The honourable member for Peace River has a petition.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. As chair of the Standing Committee on Private Bills, I request leave to present in accordance with Standing Order 98 sub 2 one petition that has been received for private bills. Petition of Dr. Sean Flynn, President of St. Joseph College, of the St. Joseph College Amendment Act 2023. Thank you.
Notices of motions. Introduction of bills. Tabling returns and reports.
Other tablings? Seeing none, the clerk.
Tablings to the clerk. Deferred divisions.
Honourable members, we are at orders of the day, orders du jour.
Message from Her Honour, the Honourable the Lieutenant Governor.
The Honourable the President of Treasury Board and the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I've received a message from Her Honour, the Honourable the Lieutenant Governor, which I now transmit to you.
Order. All rise, please.
The Lieutenant Governor transmits supplementary supply estimates of certain sums required for the service of the province for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023, and recommends the same to the Assembly. Please be seated. The Honourable the Treasury Board President and the Minister of Finance.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I now wish to table the 2022-23 supplementary supply estimates along with an update to the 22-23 fiscal plan as required by the Fiscal Planning and Transparency Act. This 2022-23 fiscal plan update contains no changes from the information provided in the 23-26 fiscal plan tabled for budget 2023. The documents I'm tabling today reflect the realities we've faced and the needs we've addressed since I tabled budget 2022 in February of last year. The numbers in these documents reflect this government's commitment to save for the future, increase the capacity of our healthcare and education systems, and adapt to the changing global economy. These funding requests will also provide for the planned spending to enable electricity rebates and other affordability supports that have provided relief to Albertans struggling with our current affordability crisis. The unique and challenging circumstances of this last year called on the government to act fast and to make life more affordable, and we responded. Mr. Speaker, in total, the supplementary supply estimates will allow additional spending by 19 government departments. When passed, the estimates will authorize an approximate increase of $2.7 billion in expense funding, $500,000 in capital investment funding for the government, and $292 million in financial transactions. Of this funding, the four highest expenses are a $753 million for Treasury Board and Finance for investment in the Alberta Heritage Savings Trust Fund, $636 million for energy, primarily for the cost of selling oil and the site rehabilitation plan, $553 million for health, primarily for physician payments and the new Alberta Medical Association agreement, $355 million for affordability and utilities for rebates and grants under the Affordability Action Plan. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Motions. Motion number 23, Honourable Mr. Taves.
The Honourable the Minister of Finance, Treasury Board.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the creativity in my title today. Mr. Speaker, I now move government motion number 23. Be it resolved that the message from the Honourable Lieutenant Governor for the 22-23 supplementary supply estimates for the General Revenue Fund and all matters connected therewith be referred to the Committee of Supply.
Honourable members, thank you to the Honourable the President of the Treasury Board, the Minister of Finance. He has moved Government Motion 23. Government Motion 23 is debatable pursuant to Standing Order 18.1I. Is there anyone wishing to join in the debate? Seeing none, I am prepared to call on the Minister to close debate. The Minister. Honourable members, the President of Treasury Board and the Minister of Finance has moved Government Motion 23. All those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. No. In my opinion, the ayes have it. That motion is carried and so ordered.
Government motion number 24, Honourable Mr. Taves.
The Honourable the President of Treasury Board and the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I now move government motion number 24. Be it resolved that pursuant to the Standing Order 61-2, the Committee of Supply shall be called to consider the 22-23 supplementary supply estimates for 3 hours on Monday, March 20th, 2023.
Honourable members, pursuant to Standing Order 61-2, this is a non-debatable motion. Having heard the motion as proposed by the Honourable the President of Treasury Board and the Minister of Finance, does the Assembly agree to the motion, Government Motion 24? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. In my opinion, the ayes have it. That motion is carried and so ordered. Just 1 second. I see, it appears to me like the Honourable the Government House Leader is rising, or wanted to rise, prior to calling the Committee of Supply. Does he have a question, or the Honourable the Government House Leader?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do rise to request unanimous consent to allow for 1-minute bells in Committee of Supply, including the First Division.
Honourable members, this is a request for unanimous consent. It would shorten the bells in Committee of Supply, including the First Division. It's a relatively uncommon request, so I want to ensure that everyone understands what we are agreeing to, but I will ask only one question. Is there anyone opposed to providing unanimous consent for 1-minute bells upon the entry into Committee of the Supply, including the First Division? Unanimous consent is granted. The Clerk.
Committee of Supply.
Honourable members, I'd like to now call the committee to order. Prior to beginning, the chair will outline the process for this afternoon. The Committee of Supply will first call on the chairs of the legislative policy committees to report on their meetings with the various ministries under their mandate. No vote is required when these reports are presented. The committee will then proceed to the vote on the estimates of the offices of the Legislative Assembly. The vote on the main estimates will then take place. Finally, the chair would like to remind all honourable members of Standing Order 32.3, which provides that after the... We have decided this is not relevant anymore, given the previous unanimous motion. I would like to now call on the chair of the Standing Committee of Alberta's Economic Future to present the committee's report. The
Committee on Alberta's Economic Future, and pursuant to Standing Order 59, Section 1, Subsection 10, I am pleased to report that the committee has reviewed the 2023-2024 proposed estimates and business plans for the following ministries: Executive Council, Ministry of Advanced Education, Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Forestry, Parks and Tourism, Ministry of Infrastructure, Ministry of Jobs, Economy and Northern Development, Ministry of Skilled Trades and Professions, Ministry of Technology and Innovation, Ministry of Trade, Immigration and Multiculturalism. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, honourable member. I'd like to now call on the chair of the Standing Committee on Families and Communities to present the committee's report. The honourable member for Camrose.
The Standing Committee on Families and Communities, pursuant to Standing Order 59.0110, I'm pleased to report that the committee has reviewed the 2023-24 proposed estimates and business plans for the following ministries: Ministry of Children's Services, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Mental Health and Addiction, Ministry of Public Safety and Emergency Services, Ministry of Seniors, Community and Social Services, Ministry of Service Alberta and Red Tape Reduction. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, honourable member. Now, the chair of the Standing Committee on Resource Stewardship, the Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Chair of the Standing Committee on Resource Stewardship and pursuant to Standing Order 59.01-10, I am pleased to report that the committee has reviewed the 2023-2024 proposed estimates and business plans for the following ministries: Ministry of Affordability and Utilities, Ministry of Agriculture and Irrigation, Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Environment and Protected Areas, Ministry of Indigenous Relations, Ministry of Municipal Affairs, Ministry of Transportation and Economic Corridors, and Ministry of Treasury, Board and Finance. And I'd like to thank all of my committee members for their participation. Thank you.
Thank you, honourable member. We shall now proceed to the vote on the 2023-24 Offices of the Legislative Assembly Estimates General Revenue Fund, pursuant to Standing Order 5903 sub 5, which requires that these estimates be decided without debate or amendment prior to the vote on the main estimates. I must now put the following question. On all matters relating to the 2023-24 Offices of the Legislative Assembly Estimates General Revenue Fund for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024, $180,409,000. Are you agreed? Any opposed? It is carried. Shall the vote be reported? Are you agreed? Any opposed? That is carried. We shall now proceed to the final vote on the main estimates. Those members in favor of the resolutions for the 2023-24 Government Estimates General Revenue Fund for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Please say no. No. That is carried. A division has been called. Ring the bells. Members, a division has been called on a motion to approve Government Estimates General Revenue Fund. All those in favor of the motion, please stand.
The Honourable Mr. Lowen, the Honourable Mrs. Savage, the Honourable Mr. Guthrie, the Honourable Mr. Dreeshen, the Honourable Mr. Newdorf, the Honourable Mr. Scow, the Honourable Mr. Madu, the Honourable Mr. Taves, the Honourable Minister LaGrange, the Honourable Mr. Glubish, the Honourable Mrs. Sawney, the Honourable Mr. Nally, the Honourable Mr. Nixon, Mr. Williams, Mr. Hanson, the Honourable Mr. Amory, Mr. Gottfried, the Honourable Ms. Furr, the Honourable Ms. Pond, Mr. Stephan, the Honourable Mr. Hunter, Ms. Lovely, the Honourable Mrs. Allard, Mr. Getson, Ms. Rosen, Mr. Sigurdsson, the Honourable Mr. Yassine, Mr. Rosewell, the Honourable Mr. Panda, Mr. Van Dyken, the Honourable Mr. Nixon, Mr. Reid, the Honourable Mr. Orr, Mr. Long, Mr. Turchin, the Honourable Mrs. Ahir, Mr. Smith.
All those opposed, please stand.
Ms. Sweet, the Honourable Mr. Sabier, the Honourable Mr. Egan, the Honourable Ms. Sigurdsson, Member Loyola, Member Carson, the Honourable Mr. Billis, the Honourable Mr. Fian.
Madam Chair, total for the motion 37, total against 8.
Honourable members, that is carried. We will proceed with the voting. Shall the vote be reported? Are you agreed? Agreed. Any opposed? Carried. I would now like to invite the Honourable Government House Leader to move that the committee rise and report the 2023-24 Offices of the Legislative Assembly Estimates General Revenue Fund and the 2023-24 Government Estimates General Revenue Fund. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the committee rise and report the 2023-2024 Office of the Legislative Assembly Estimates General Revenue Fund and the 2023 Government Estimates General Revenue Fund.
Having heard that motion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. That's carried. We shall now rise and report.
The Honourable Member for Airdrie.
Mr. Speaker, the Committee of Supply has had under consideration certain resolutions relating to the 2023-24 Offices of the Legislative Assembly Estimates General Revenue Fund and the 2023-24 Government Estimates General Revenue Fund. Reports as follows and requests leave to sit again. The following resolutions for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024 have been approved. The Offices of the Legislative Assembly. Support to the Legislative Assembly, $76,763,000. Office of the Auditor General, $29,620,000. Office of the Ombudsman, $4,480,000. Office of the Chief Electoral Officer, $42,397,000. Office of the Ethics Commissioner, $1 million. Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner, $8,534,000. Office of the Child and Youth Advocate, $16,205,000. Office of the Public Interest Commissioner, $1,410,000. The government main estimates: advanced education expense $2,416,985,000. Capital investment $25,000. Financial transaction $1,060,100,000. Affordability and utilities expense $87,128,000. Capital investment $25,000. Financial transactions $906,970,000. Agriculture and irrigation expense $679,000. $1,936,000. Capital investment, $7,177,000. Children's services expense, $2,309,912,000. Capital investment, $10 billion. $10 million. Culture expense, $309,380,000. Capital investment, $2,331,000. Financial transactions, $1,710,000. Education expense, $5,479,943,000. Capital investment, $565,000. Financial transactions, $18,920,000. Energy expense, $579,581,000. Capital investment, $1 million. Environment and protected areas expense, $553,936,000. Capital investment, $59,396,000. Financial transactions, $100,000. Executive council expense, $35,245,000. Capital investment, $25,000. Forestry, parks, and tourism expense, $397,957,000. Capital expense, $85,110,000. Financial transactions, $1,310,000. Health expense, $25,037,760,000. Capital investment, $28,865,000. Financial transactions, $88,876,000. Indigenous relations expense, $225,693,000. Capital investments, $25,000. Infrastructure expense, $477,704,000. Capital investment, $1,692,856,000. Financial transactions, $28,114,000. Jobs, economy, and northern development expense, $249,693,000. Capital investment, $1,970,000. Justice expense, $648,842,000. Capital investment, $17,816,000. Mental health and addiction expense, $275,005,000. Capital investment, $25,000. Municipal affairs expense, $993,931,000. Capital investment, $600,000. Public safety and emergency services expense, $1,107,941,000. Capital investment, $6,275,000. Financial transactions, $4,196,000. Seniors, community, and social services expense, $5,066,076,000. Capital investment, $4,072,000. Financial transactions, $19,700,000. Service, Alberta and red tape reduction expense, $143,767,000. Capital investment, $45,520,000. Financial transactions, $5,500,000. Skilled trades and professions expense, $218,811,000. Capital investment, $25,000. Technology and innovation expense, $940,075,000. Capital investment, $112,385,000. Trade, immigration, and multiculturalism expense of $85,874,000. Capital investment, $25,000. Transportation and economic corridors expense, $1,748,000. Capital investment, $1,837,114,000. Financial transactions, $134,644,000. Treasury Board and Finance expense, $240,261,000. Capital investment, $25,000. And the contingency is $1.5 billion. Mr. Speaker, that concludes my report.
Honourable member, just like reconciling the home checkbook, isn't it? Great job on all those numbers, but honourable member, if we could request some clarification on the following. Financial transactions for affordability and utilities, expenses for culture, expenses for energy, Expenses for Service Alberta. Expenses for Tech and Innovation, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's been a long week. General, our government main estimates, clarification on affordability and utilities expense is $87,128,000. Capital investment.
For the financial transactions for affordability and utilities, please.
Oh, just, are there financial transactions for all of the
No,
requests?
register expenses, please.
Financial transactions for affordability and utilities.
Yes, please.
Is $96,970,000. Financial transactions for culture.
Expenses for the rest, please.
Expenses for the rest. Expenses for culture expense $301,380,000. Expense for energy is $571,581,000. Expense for Service Alberta and red tape reduction is $143,677,000. Expense for technology and innovation is $948,075,000. Mr. Speaker, are we squared up?
You're squared. Thank you very much, honourable member. I'll say I'm really glad I'm in this chair and not your chair today. So. Honourable members, does the Assembly concur on the report? Any opposed? So ordered. I would also like to alert the honourable members that pursuant to Standing Order 59037, following the Committee Supplies report on the main estimates, the Assembly immediately reverts to introduction of bills for the introduction of the appropriation bill.
Introduction of bills.
The Honourable, the President of the Treasury Board and the Minister of Finance.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I request leave to introduce Bill 11, the Appropriation Act 2023. This being a money bill, Her Honour, the Lieutenant Governor, having been informed of the contents of this bill, recommends the same to the Assembly. This bill requests a total of $57.4 billion from the General Revenue Fund, consistent with Budget 2023 presented in the House, this House, on February 28th. I ask all of my colleagues in this Assembly on both sides of the aisle for their support in this bill.
Hear, hear.
Honourable members, the Honourable President of the Treasury Board and Minister of Finance has moved first reading of Bill 11, Appropriation Act 2023. Those in favour of the motion for first reading, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? I believe the ayes have it. Motion is carried and so ordered.
Bill 11, Appropriation Act 2023, introduced by the Honourable Mr. Taves, is now read a first time.
The Honourable Government House Leader has caught my eye.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It has been a wonderful week of work here in the legislature, but the time has come to head on to our respective directions. You don't have to go home, but I encourage you to, but you do have to get out of here. And with that said, I do move that the Assembly be adjourned until 1:30 p.m. on Monday, March 20th, 2023. Hear, hear.
Honourable members, having heard the motion, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. Motion is carried. The Assembly stands adjourned until Monday afternoon at 1:30. Order.